Hello viewers. No doubt you are here today because you, like me, love movies. Movies have, for years now, captivated audiences through their ability to transport viewers through space and time. They're able to bring you into worlds that are entirely new, alien, different from our world. And one form of filmmaking which does this very well to captivate our imaginations is stop-motion animation. Whether it's the special effects magnificence of Ray Harryhausen or the full-length animated features such as Tim Burton and Henry Selick's The Nightmare Before Christmas, stop-motion has always been able to captivate the imaginations of hundreds through its ability to transport people to worlds that are not only so different from our own world, but also very realistic in the form of animation. And I myself have become quite infatuated with the art, if I'm honest. I prefer to all forms of animation, even anime, sorry. And so I decided to become a stop-motion animator of my own, and I began with these Legos. Yes, Legos. It may be simple, but they do give you a good idea of how to start in stop motion. Now, I've been taught how to do stop motion. I have been taught how to use Adobe Animate, and I have edited my stop motion in Adobe Animate, but they've only taught me how to create images within Adobe Animate and then animate them with the software. But just from my knowledge of how stop motion works, I have been able to work out how to use these 3D figures to create animation. So I am self-taught in the art of stop motion. And what you're about to see now are some of my earliest animation tests. They're very poor quality, I admit. But if you are thinking of going into stop motion yourself, well, hopefully these videos will give you a little idea of how to begin. So my first film, as you saw, was based on the Under the Red Hood story arc from the DC Comics character known as the Joker. And it also gave me the opportunity to learn some of the secrets behind making stop motion. One thing that was difficult, of course, is that I did not have anything to hold up my characters, and I did not have Photoshop at use to edit those out. So I had to keep on working with my characters to find out how to position them in such a way, even when they're not being held up by studs, to keep them upright. One such example is when the Joker is falling, in which case I simply hooked his legs onto the studs at the edge, like the little feet part. And then, later on, you see him falling a bit more, and he is grasping, actually his hand is actually holding on to the rail right next to him. But the camera is positioned in such a way, well, that didn't work well, didn't it? But the camera was positioned in such a way that it could not see that he was holding on, like this. If you can see that. And then, of course, there was the part where he falls into a vat of acid. For that, I had to pull out a lot of the studs that were in there, and then place them in there, and then put in a few back in, and then the last few ones, I would carefully, by hand, position them in such a way that they were very close to the position they were in the previous frame. That way, if you slow it down to like 1 frame a second, then you can see how the movement is very fluid. It was very precise, I had to do. And then of course there was the part where he emerges from the water outside the factory. Obviously, of course, I had to start with a plain blue platform to represent the water, but then I would replace it with something like this, and of course I'd put all these things around there to imitate the water, like that would be the foam and that would be the water rising up. And then of course with that I could move him upwards in 1 frame, and then upward, more up, and then the next frame, and keep going and going until eventually it comes in and I close that hole back up to create the impression that he had actually come out of the water. Something to consider when doing animation is the frame rate. As you probably would have known from doing animation, you can often sometimes do different frame rates, experiment with different frame rates. Like most animators will do 12 frames a second, in which case you have to have 12 different images for every second. Though for more precise movement you can do 24 frames a second, but oftentimes people will use 12. And then of course there's the terms that animating on 24 frames a second will be animating on ones, since it's normally 24 frames a second, and then on in 12 frames per second it's animating on twos, and so on and so forth. Now, and I was able to, in my earliest animations, work on on different frame rates to give these characters like different movements. For instance, if they were walking, I would be animating on threes, but if they were running, I would animate it on twos, because that way he would be going like from here to here to here, and then from here to here to here to here. That's how I would always animate him. And so if I animated him at threes, it would show him going a bit slower. But if I animated on twos, then it would show him going faster. And of course, later on, I developed a way of how to make them walk, how to make different styles of walking and running, so that no matter what, I do 24 frames a second. But you may want to consider, when doing these animations, how to use the frame rates to enhance your animation. So my final animation, as you saw, starred my two good friends here, Ben and Matt. This was the first time in which I was able to try and work with some actual stop-motion puppets. This is the closest I've gotten to it. You yourselves, if you want to try and advance with left hands, you may try creating these mech sort of characters. Now again, I do not use anything to hold up my characters. So for this, I had to work out how to balance these characters on their feet and how to keep them upright without falling over. Normally, of course, with a lot of the Lego characters, as I said, occasionally I just had to use the sets to get them upright with the studs going into their feet. But in this instance, however, I did not have anything to keep them upright, so I kept on having to try and find ways to balance them, just using their natural weight. Of course, modern stop-motion animators, as I said, they have like these things to hold them up. And also, of course, occasionally they will put these little pegs into their feet, which will allow them to stick them into the set. But I did not have any knowledge of that before, and nor was I able to do such a thing, I think. But luckily, however, using these characters, it allowed me, since Lego characters, of course, whereas I have to use very precise movements, but it's very difficult to animate such tiny characters with precision, whereas with full-size ones, it's very easy to move them just slightly in between each frame. So with this, I was able to animate him these characters more close to 12 frames a second, and I even went on 24 frames a second in certain shots. But I've never went but no matter what, it was either 12 frames a second or 24 frames a second. No 8 frames a second or 6 frames a second or anything like that. It makes this one of the most fluid and also one of the most complex animations I've done. And one final point I should make is that you have to be aware of the lighting. As I was filming, I discovered that as the day grew darker, then the lighting in the room will also get darker. So you want to try and control the lighting in the room to make sure that you have consistency in your shot. I was able to correct them in the lighting in post-production, but just something to bear in mind. So that'll be all we have for today now. But before I go, I'd like to give you a little sneak peek of what I'm working on currently. I don't know when I'm going to be releasing this video, the next video I'll be making, but for now, try and picture the scene. A ship sailing across the water, captain at the helm, everything is alright. But little do the sailors know that beneath the waves lies great danger.